الشاكرين والصلاة والسلام على سيد المرسلين. What we observed today was a practical and a tutorial for those wannabe debaters regarding how not to debate. In fact, the scholars in the past would write books regarding how not to do something. And if anyone wants to debate a fellow Muslim, there are certain guidelines and rules which the scholars have set out, like Arabic grammar. When we read Arabic text, there are guidelines and rules which the ulama have set out. Likewise, in debating, ulama have set out rules and guidelines of how to debate when Muslims debate one another. This individual, when he came, I mentioned to him this book Al-Rashidiyya. Now this goes above the heads of many people watching, even the Deobandi followers of this individual, when they do not know that this book is taught in Darul Ulum Deoband. This book is taught in all the Darul Ulum supposedly. But whichever graduate I have debated from these Darul Ulums, they have been unable to apply the rules and principles of these works. Abu Layth from Birmingham was totally unfamiliar, supposedly a graduate mufti from a Deobandi institute, totally ignorant of the rules of debating. Likewise, this individual, Usman, who came from Bradford, totally ignorant, was unable to answer simple questions regarding the rules and regulations of debating. He reinterpreted what I was doing as being running away from the debate. Well, this can never be the case, because there are individuals who are more learned than him. In fact, this individual, I would say, is totally ignorant, is not even learned, who are more learned than him, that I have debated and sat with. They were able to conduct themselves according to the regulations of Adabul Bahthi wal Munadhara, mannerisms of debating and the rules and regulations of debating. So, where does this leave us? If the graduates of the Darul Ulums in the UK are of this caliber, then the future is bleak for the people who follow these type of graduates. Why is the future bleak? Because they will be unable to apply the principles of Islam in a modern context. And this is why I would say Abu Layth has rebelled to the other extreme of the spectrum. You have two extremes of the spectrum. You have the graduates who become extreme secularists, and in some cases agnostics, and then you have the graduates who become takfiri, meaning those who declare Muslims kafir. Now he said regarding me that I have declared people disbelievers. In fact, if a person relates a fatwa, it does not necessarily mean he as an individual is declaring other Muslims as disbelievers. Now where I wanted this discussion to go to, because he was unable to even classify his claim. He was unable to classify the claim. What type of claim is this? When he realized he's unable to, he didn't know the classifications. He was unaware. In order to cover that, he attempted to make diversions. And this is what Abu Layth did. Meaning, if he was ignorant of the terms, he should have said, I am unfamiliar of these terms. I would have explained the terms to him. I would have schooled him in that regard, and then moved on to those principles of debating. Now the paper that he gave, it said blasphemous texts of Barelvi ulama. Ahmad Rida Khan and other Barelvi ulama are guilty of blasphemy in light of Barelvi principles. So he wanted to extract works of those whom he terms as being Barelvi ulama and then say they are blasphemous. So I wanted him, now if he had told me what type of claim this is a tasdeeq. By the way, if he is listening, he should have said this is tasdeeq. This is an affirmational construct where he has made a claim. And then I would have asked him, which is known as istifsar, with questioning. I would have questioned him, what does he exactly mean by blasphemy? It's a broad term, specify, meaning disbelief. And I would have asked him the types of disbelief, the definition of disbelief, and how one applies a fatwa of disbelief on individuals. Now, what is my stance on declaring other Muslims kafir? What rules and regulations do we follow? Let me tell you something. I had something prepared for him, and now that he's gone, I will show the viewers that our ulama, when I say our ulama, this is a broad term, Sunni ulama, which is not limited to Pakistan and India. In fact, I believe so many of the discussions that occur in Pakistan and India are so irrelevant to this country. In fact, the author of one of these works, Muti'ur Rahman, in the introduction, the person who wrote the introduction states, those who do not even know Urdu are not even obliged to believe anything regarding those people. So why on earth are you attempting to declare other Muslims as disbelievers without looking at the fact that scholars, firstly, have said that there are 729 possibilities of any statement. This is one rule, 729 possibilities. If someone states a blasphemous statement, kufr, heretical statement, there are 729 possibilities why that individual may have said that statement. He said from Barelvi ulama, the principles of Barelvi ulama. These same scholars he calls Barelvi ulama have placed those 729 possibilities. From these 729, they only declare one possibility as the individual being a disbeliever. So imagine this. Any statement or an action of an individual which people will say this is disbelief, the mufti, the scholar, the real learned scholar, not someone who only knows the 6 principles of tabligh, not someone who just studied 4 years or 6 years, this does not make you a scholar, meaning learned ulama, the likes of Shaykh Murabitul Hajj, rahimallahu ta'ala, who spent decades studying and teaching. These learned ulama will look at the 729 possibilities of the individual. If the person passes 728 possibilities of not being a disbeliever, then they will declare him a disbeliever. This is something known as ihtiyat, precaution, before declaring other believers disbelievers. And these are the principles that the so-called Barelvi ulama of India and Pakistan follow. These are the principles. So even if he had gone into the debate, they examine the statements of any scholar. Now with me, I have one of the works of Imam Ahmad Rida Khan, rahimahullah ta'ala, known as Imba'ul Hayy. If you check this work on page 237, he has a section regarding whatever is transmitted from the scholars, awliya of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, people like Shaykh Muhyiddin Ibn Arabi rahimallahu ta'ala and other great scholars. There are 4, meaning if they have statements that go against outward the Sharia, there are 4 possible ways in which this can be looked and examined. Meaning he did not rush to do takfir of any individual. He had these principles. In fact, these principles, I highlighted these principles to some of the ulama of Deobandi in UK, who I met 2 weeks ago in a private gathering. We had a discussion regarding this. I referenced for them this work of Imam Ahmad Rida Khan in Fatawa in volume 21 of the new edition, this work known as Hajbul Awar or Hajbul Uwar an Makhdumi Bihar. This is one work of his where he gives the guidelines and principles that if you find a kufr statement in any scholar's work, there are guidelines and principles before giving a judgment regarding that scholar. For instance, previously I mentioned in the paradigm shift lecture that there was a Sunni scholar who referred to Fadlul Haq Khairabadi and the followers of Ismail al-Dahlawi and the followers of Fadlul Haq Khairabadi as both are groups being ma'jurain, meaning both groups are rewarded. Did this scholar really say this? The answer is no. You will find that there is tahrif in his work. There were people who, when they published the fatwa, they added those things onto the works. If Deobandi ulama today said that whatever statements you find in our works have been tampered, and they said we do not believe in this and we do not make tenets, these tampered statements as tenets of faith, the disputes would cut down. An example of applying these principles, and by the way, these principles are also mentioned by Imam Ahmad Rida Khan in another work, Idharul Haqq al-Jali. He mentions these principles. An example, Maulana Al-Hajj Imdadullah Muhajir Makki Rahimahullah Ta'ala, a great scholar that Deobandis hold in admiration, and we Sunni Muslims also hold in admiration. If you look at his work Kulliyat Imdadiyah, he has statements the likes of which, where he mentions that a human being, so where he mentions in this particular work that a person zahir mein banda aur batin mein khuda ho jata hai. Now even you can look at the context, this is by the way in Kulliyat Imdadiyah page 26, that a person can reach such a state where outwardly he is a human, inwardly he is God Almighty. Now this statement, when this statement is brought to a scholar, and these so-called Barelvi learned scholars, when I say Barelvi, remember I do not mean people who wear jingles on their legs and dance around graves and do prostration to graves and commit bid'ah and all these acts of bid'ah and innovation. No, I mean what they are calling so-called Barelvi ulama are in fact Sunni ulama. What do? They examine the statement with 729 possibilities before applying any fatwa. Now if someone thinks that this is something I am making up, they can refer to the book of Maulana Muti'ur Rahman, which is online. You can get this book online. This book, Ahle Qibla Ki Takfir, here is a hard copy. Ahle Qibla Ki Takfir. This book, he warns regarding declaring all Deobandis as kafir, all Salafis as kafir, all Nadwis as kafir, or all so-called Barelvis and Sufis as kafir. He warns against this. He's what Uthman would refer to as a Barelvi alim. This scholar in fact warns against this. He says when a fatwa of disbelief is given, there are 729 possibilities of any verdict of disbelief. After the scholars have examined 728 possibilities, they only give the fatwa based on one. After examining 728, meaning they look at the statement. Is the statement possible to be reinterpreted? They have two ways of interpreting. Ta'wil ba'id, a far-fetched interpretation, ta'wil qarib, or a ta'wil batil. Ta'wil batil would mean a totally rejected interpretation. They look at all these things. They look at the statement. They look at whether the person actually said the statement. Then they look at whether the person retracted the statement. After they examine all of these possibilities, which end up being 729 possibilities, then they give a verdict that this person is a kafir, this individual is a kafir. Likewise, if you find any statements of scholars in their works, like the work of Al-Hajj Imdadullah Muhajir Makki Rahimahullah Ta'ala, or Shaykh Muhyiddin Ibn Arabi, or any one of the great ulama of Islam, a person cannot rush to declare that individual a kafir. They can say the statement is wrong, but why is the statement made? They will look at all the rules and regulations that the ulama have mentioned. Now this similar statement is mentioned by Maulana Ashraf Ali Thanwi, the scholar of Deoband. This scholar of Deoband, he has this book on Shaykh Muhyiddin Ibn Arabi. In fact, he has a few works on Shaykh Muhyiddin Rahimahullah Ta'ala. If you, this Armagane Ibn Arabi, this work Armagane Ibn Arabi, this work is in total how many volumes? 3 volumes in total. And in this volume, this particular volume, what volume was this?
There's one volume, 3 beside it.
Yes, there's 3 treatises written by him in this monographs written, and in one of them on page 106. So this work again is published in the year 1999, and the publishers are mentioned here also as Tasawwuf Foundation, which is found in Pakistan, in Lahore, Tasawwuf Foundation. So Maulana Ashraf Ali Thanwi has this statement where again he mentions here that if someone again claims, if you इस इबारत में अब्द के लिए इलाहियत का हुक्म कर दिया बिनाअन अलल इस्तिलाह, that in this statement that Shaykh Muhyiddin has stated that a human being becomes God. Yes, but then Ashraf Ali Thanwi states that this is bina'an ala al-istilah, a jargon used by the Sufis, and he makes an interpretation for Shaykh Muhyiddin. Would we declare Maulana Ashraf Ali Thanwi a disbeliever just because we found this statement in his book? Meaning there are numerous types of statements like this found in many works of many scholars. Like I mentioned, the work of Al-Hajj Imdadullah Muhajir Makki rahimahullah ta'ala. But what will the scholar do? A real scholar, not a so-called graduate of Darul Ulum Bari, who is unable to even know the basic definitions of Ilmul Munadhara. And let this be a warning to anyone who challenges in the future, that if you challenge me specifically, Muslims, and again note, I am not declaring him a kafir, because when I asked him, are you mani', these are technical terms. I know many people get lost and they think Shaykh Asrar is being too technical, because I am not playing up to the audience. I'm not entertaining the audience. I was being sincere with the brother. I was asking him, in this claim of yours, are you mani' or mu'allil? When he realized he is unable to answer this, he said, are you Muslim? He asked me, are you Muslim? Now, of course, he knows I am a Muslim, but any statements of any scholar that you find in any work, even if you may condemn the statement, it is not easy to declare the scholar who has written down the statement as a kafir. Waliyadhu billah. You would have to look at 729 possibilities. Likewise, I always advise my students to read Usul al-Takfir of Pir Muhammad Chishti. You have a copy. This work, again, Usul al-Takfir, this is a work which was recommended to me many years ago by Maulana Muhammad Naveed Jamil, who is also present. And this work, Usul al-Takfir, which is nearly 500 pages long, by Pir Muhammad Chishti, again a so-called Barelvi scholar. He warns regarding takfir and people declaring. Today we have such a situation that a person attends a wedding of a person who happens to be a part of Tabligh Jamaat, Jama'atul Tabligh. Some people will go and declare the people who attended the wedding as being kafir. They will say your nikah is broken. Is this permitted according to the usul, the principles that so-called Barelvi ulama have written? The answer is no. If you read Usul al-Takfir and you read Ahle Qibla ki Takfir, which is this work which I pointed out, and a real learned scholar will look at all these 729 possibilities. This is why in previous discussions with the likes of a Sheikh Hamza Yusuf and other people, when people said that you are declaring him a disbeliever, those people are unfamiliar with the background of the ulama that we associate with. Those ulama, whether they be scholars of Pakistan or whether they be scholars of Syria, are muhtat, are precautious before declaring any person a disbeliever. This is why what we have learnt from today, two things minimum. Number one, never debate an ignorant man. In future, if anyone wants to debate me from the Muslims, they must write down their claim, write down what issue they want to debate me on, and they must strictly follow the rules of adabul bahthi wal munadhara. I debate atheists according to their principles. But this individual, he said to me, debate me with my principles. This is absurd. I will never go into reading Arabic text other than except by using nahaw, grammar, Arabic grammar. Likewise, when debating a fellow Muslim, I will debate him using the principles that have been set down by those scholars that we agree upon. Now, unfortunately, this also happened with Abu Layth. He was unable to understand the rules of principles of debating, even though in that case I would let off Abu Layth lightly, because I challenged him. In this case, this individual challenged me. So if he challenged me, he is the mudda'i, the mu'allil. He was the mu'allil because his da'wah was tasdeeq. This was the answer. He couldn't even answer this, and to run away from this, he may be able to entertain young people who are unfamiliar of this. Likewise, when debating Al-Ustad Abdul Rahman, when he was unable to answer Al-Hukm Al-Aqli, the rational judgment, he attempted to divert the subject. His young followers may think, yes, by shouting you have won the debate. I said to this individual, you are not in Hyde Park. This is not Hyde Park. We are in a professional setting, and we do not shout over one another or interject one another. People have observed my debates with atheists, non-Muslims, and with other Muslims. You will notice that in none of those debates I shout, nor am I rude to my interlocutor. In fact, I attempt to be well-mannered as much as possible. But this individual arrived with the intention of flaring up sectarian tension. Now he said, you are afraid to open up the books of these scholars. The answer is no. I wanted to agree with him on the principles. Now, this piece of paper that he wrote, he said we will agree according to so-called Barelvi principles. If he had waited and had patience, if he had agreed to these so-called Barelvi principles, I would have gifted him a copy of this book. And he would have read this book according to so-called Barelvi principles. Before declaring any individual a kafir, you must read 729 possibilities. Especially if you read the statements of people who are pious, awliya of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the likes of Shaykh Muhyiddin ibn Arabi. Al-Imam Ahmad Rida Khan mentions 4 principles in Imba'ul Hayy, but in other works, Hajbul Awar, he mentions the broader principles regarding those ulama. So he uses the word fraternity. So for argument's sake, I will say our fraternity is not quick to declare anyone a disbeliever. Now, the question they will say is regarding Husam al-Haramain, the fatwa of Imam Ahmad Rida Khan regarding the 4 Deobandi elders. If he wanted to re-examine Husam al-Haramain, he should re-examine Husam al-Haramain in light of the 729 possibilities. If Husam al-Haramain does not fit into the one possibility of kufr, then if he can say that it fits into the other 728, then that is for him to prove so and write something academic. So at this onset, I will leave this issue and I will invite the ulama of Deoband in the UK how to go ahead and resolve these sectarian issues. Firstly, the way to resolve these sectarian issues is that they should read this literature first, the likes of Ahl Qibla ki Takfir, Hajbul Awar, and the principles set in Imba'ul Hayy, as well as the work Usul al-Takfir of Pir Muhammad Tishti. Read these works, meaning read the works of your opponent. Then sit down with the ulama who affirm Husam al-Haramain. Sit down with them, and this is what I proposed initially, because the person, Uthman, he removed his initial video. In that video he said the likes of Maulana Yasir al-Hanafi and others are involved, and in fact they are not involved. Maulana Yasir al-Hanafi is not involved with this Maulana Uthman. I will still attempt to be respectful and not lose my temper. He is not involved in this mannerism of debating. What they should do is sit with us in private and discuss these issues until we come to some point of agreement in accordance with the usul. Because look, we have Al-Quranul Kareem, the Sunnah of the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, we have Ijma' and we have Qiyas. These are 4 principles we all agree on. Meaning the graduates of Darul Ulum Deoband agree with us on these 4 principles. We agree on these principles. Therefore we should sit down and discuss these issues. But if he is coming just to say that you are a kafir, because at the end that is what he declared me as. He said, according to your Maulana Ahmad Rida Khan, you are a kafir because you refer to me as Maulana, therefore you are a kafir according to your principles. That fatwa that he was attempting to quote again would have a broader context, an application, an understanding of the distinction between luzumul kufr and iltizamul kufr, and what type of application that fatwa actually has. But this individual was not willing to sit down in an academic fashion and discuss that. In fact, he came here in order to declare Barelvi ulama as being kafir and declare me as a kafir and all the followers of this so-called Barelvi movement as being kafir. So how do we move forward? We move forward by sitting down and discussing firstly with learned ulama, the likes, meaning learned ulama from their side, the likes of Maulana Yusuf Mutala, who is not into sectarian partisanship, as from what I have heard. These are the elders of the Deobandi ulama in the UK. Our ulama are willing to sit down. I mean, when I say our ulama, those scholars who have the same Sunni positions as I do, they are willing to sit down in private, not in public, and discuss these issues as to how to come to a common ground and a point of agreement. Additional to that, this individual has been ostracized, meaning he was unable to even muster up support from his own community. He has been ostracized. I met ulama of Deoband 2 weeks ago. They told me that he has been ostracized. They do not like his approach. They see him as being divisive. Additional to that, he is unable to apply what he has learned. Meaning, there is one thing reading these works, polemical works theoretically, but it is another thing to apply those works in everyday life. Like some people read fiqh works, they cannot apply them in a modern context. This is why Abu Layth has rebelled to the other side, because the Binori people were unable to teach him how to apply kalam, theology and fiqh, jurisprudence in a modern secular world. For us, however, with the scholars that I have studied with, we are able to apply, alhamdulillah, fiqh, jurisprudence and kalam in a modern context without forfeiting our principles. So these principles which he was denying, these principles are principles which they study, but he was unable to apply. And this lack of application made him lose his temper. This is the short message that I have for people who tuned in today. But additional to this, I would say, in future, anyone who would want to challenge me to a debate, write down your proposition in English and Arabic, both. Muslims, this is for Muslim scholars, in Arabic and English. And you must debate me according to the principles of Adab al-Bahthi wal-Munadhara, not your own principles that you make as you go along. If you are willing to do this, then a debate can ensue. If I believe the debate is fruitful, I will accept. Likewise, this is also a lesson to those who want to fuel the sectarianism by just simply declaring other Muslims as being kafir. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to guide this brother Uthman and all the people who came with him. And I would like to ask the brothers who are sitting if there are any additional questions or points that I may have missed that they would like me to add. Are there any additional points? So we finish at that point. Jazallahu anna Sayyidina Muhammadan sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam ma huwa ahluh. Subhana rabbika rabbil izzati amma yasifun. Wa salamun ala al-mursaleen walhamdulillahi rabbil alameen.